Victory will be ours. That was the message from President Volodymyr Zelensky to his people as the war in Ukraine reached 100 days. The Ukrainian leader also praised the Ukrainian resistance, but said the situation in Luhansk and Donetsk is critical. With a regrouped Russia on the offensive, Neil O'Reilly takes a look back at the invasion that has reshaped the world.
As sirens sound out across Kiev on February 24th, the unthinkable becomes a terrible reality. While tanks rolled across the border, the capital and other areas were hit with airstrikes and bombardments in a blitzkrieg push by Russia to overwhelm the country. From the outset, civilians were among the first casualties. Under incessant bombing in the first days, people sought refuge in basements and then began to flee en masse. Thousands crossed into neighbouring countries. The EU opened its doors. But by early March, Russia's aim of seizing the country and toppling the government was in trouble. Russian casualties mounted amid fierce Ukrainian resistance. After the initial shock, Ukrainians took inspiration from President Zelensky in military fatigues, posting defiant messages from the streets of Kyiv. In contrast, Vladimir Putin appeared isolated and disconnected, reportedly stunned by his army's failures. As those forces retreated from Kyiv, they took their revenge on local populations. Brutal massacres in Bucha and elsewhere now led to charges of war crimes and revulsion in the international community. With atrocities mounting, the West hit Russia with ever tougher sanctions and increased military aid to Ukraine. NATO was reinvigorated after years of stagnation. By May, the course of the war had changed. Russia was gradually pushed out of the north and west, its primary objectives abandoned. The Kremlin's war machine regrouped and resupplied, focused on Donbass and the southeast. Mariupol eventually fell, and the strategically important city of Severodonetsk became the key battleground. Russian forces are now progressing little by little, targeting pockets of resistance. The Ukrainians wait in hope for the arrival of Western hardware that may help them hold the line. But it looks increasingly like a long war of attrition lies ahead.
So meanwhile, the Kremlin's spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, says Russia will continue its military operation in Ukraine until, quote, all its goals have been achieved. Well, let's cross over to our correspondent, Galina Polanskaya. Galina, what else are they saying there in the Kremlin?
Hi, Chris. Well, Dmitry Peskov was asked today to give his estimations as the war passed its 100th day mark. So he said, and I quote, that Russia managed to achieve some results, and he did promise that Russia will continue until all the goals are achieved. So what are the goals? This question, Chris, is still up in the air. Peskov today said that the main goal is to protect the people of Donbass, and that's what we've been hearing from Russia. But he also said something interesting. He spoke about those territories which were occupied by Russia after the 24th of February and those separatist regions, and said that the topic of the referendums there is very important and that they could be staged when the situation is safe, which means that the Crimea scenario is certainly not excluded by the Kremlin, but on the contrary.
Galina, they're still calling this a special operation. How is, after 100 days, how is the Russian public reacting to this?
Yes, indeed, they are calling this a special military operation, and most of Russians do support it, but the interest to the war is getting more and more, less and less, intense. People are not so interested about this topic, and they also say that they are not as worried as before about what is happening in Ukraine. Those are the results of a poll conducted by the independent Levada Center, labeled a foreign agent in Russia. So this poll shows that most of Russians consider the TV as the main source of information and trust this source. That's why it's not a surprise that most people support the special military operation, and 73% think that it is a success. I spoke with Lev Gudkov, the head of Levada Center, and he told me that only 9% of Russians feel their responsibility for the deaths, for the destruction, and that many have left. And he also said that the level of support of Vladimir Putin is skyrocketing. Let's take a listen.
There is support for the war. There's approval of Putin's actions. His ratings remain at a very high level, as it always happens during military campaigns, as it was during the Second Chechen War, the war in Georgia, or the annexation of Crimea. Now his rating approval is approaching the maximum.
So the level of support of Vladimir Putin is going up. Most Russians support the special military operation, and most Russians watch the state TV. And Chris, today the state TV did not mention at all that today it's been 100 days since Russian forces invaded Ukraine.